Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole. Welcome to another episode of Hopefull, where we talk about how hope is found in Jesus, with Jesus, and because of Jesus. And this week, we have a special episode. We are diving into the topic of addiction and how there is freedom in Christ with addiction. And so, if you are struggling with addiction, or you know somebody who is, or you may be battling something that feels impossible to overcome, well, this episode is for you. I had the great opportunity and honor to sit down with two amazing men of God, one being a disciple of Christ, a gifted man of Jesus, and a sound extraordinaire, the other being a youth pastor, a preacher, and also my brother. And so I'm so excited for you guys to hear their journeys through addiction and how God has redeemed them and brought them through. It says in John chapter 8, verse 36, so if the Son sets you free, then you are free indeed. And that's the theme of this episode, freedom in Christ. We hope this sparks conversation, and we hope that you know that God is for you, not against you, and He is with you right now. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Hopefull Podcast, where we talk about how our faith in God, with God, and because of God gives us hope each and every day. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. We're here to talk about the topic of addictions. Now, I know this is not just like a woo, this is a great fun episode, but there is depth here, and I believe that God is working in and through everybody's story and everybody's life. And so we just wanted to shed light on a topic that's actually not very talked about a lot of times. Would you guys say so? So I kind of just wanted to just start it off by throwing it in this boat of like, have you guys ever dealt with addictions in your life, or is there any like story that you guys have of something that God has brought you through or breakthrough that has happened in your life before?
John Campo goes first.
Love that. We love that.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we doing a tie?
What the heck?
All right, they so in
Okay,
sync.
there you go.
All right.
Well, my testimony. I'll just start off with myself. Yeah. So I'm 12 years clean this year,
Ooh, let's go.
and my what was the question again?
Have you ever dealt with addictions before,
yeah.
or how have
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
overcome that? Yeah.
Yeah. So 12 years clean. My addiction was meth. I used to smoke a lot of ice 12
Yeah.
years ago, and yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy back then.
Yeah.
I started off young, out of high school, and just kind of fell in with my friends, and that was the thing to do, just smoke bud, and then eventually it turned into smoking the other stuff, and yeah, that was my addiction.
Yeah.
That was my struggle.
No, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? I think when it really started affecting me, what was it? 10 and 11. That's when it pretty much like took over my life. Yeah, it hit me pretty hard. And I kind of trip too on people. Not to throw a little curveball, but I try not to like um trip out as much on people because I always think like it's like a joke or going through addiction. It's not, man. It's rough,
Yeah.
especially going through that kind of stuff growing up, or if you're around it. It's like, man, that stuff takes your life away.
Yeah.
It literally does, man. And what was it? Yeah, so 2020 or 2012, 2011, that's when it really, really got to me. I was, what was it? I was in construction back then. I was in construction, and then I started using more because like we work overnights, and so the rock stars, energies, all
Yeah.
that other stuff wouldn't really like keep me up anymore. And then I kind of was like, oh well, what about this stuff? And then talked to my friends, and then that's when I started using it. And then next thing you know, it became a habit, and yeah, that was my downward spiral. And then I started using more and more, and then what was it? I started sleeping in, not going to work on time, and yeah, and that's when I hit rock bottom. Smoked away my family, my kids. The one person that really like hung on to me was my mother. She was the one who always had faith in me.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. It's all right, son.
Yeah.
You know, there's still hope. But even then, I was just like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
And fast forward a couple years, and I was just kind of doing my thing. I remember this one time, I knew it was enough when enough was enough when I started like hearing things and seeing stuff that's not supposed to be there appear. And I was like, okay. So there's two sides to the story, yeah. Like, before I believed in God, you know, because my family was in church growing up, and, you know, I believed in devils and angels and all this stuff. And then when I really hit rock bottom, that's when everything started, like, creeping in, like, random shadows and off the wall. Like, you hear voices when nobody's there. It's like, that's real, man.
Oh, snap, yeah.
Coming from the drug part of it. And it's like, okay. Okay, yeah, I think it's time. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep using. I wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's rough, man. It's rough because at that time I was like, oh, man, how am I going to stop? You know, when everybody around me was using, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, my uncles. I was like, bro, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then I kind of like was just stuck in a little area of my life where I was like, man, I'm just spinning and just turning rocks, trying to climb out of a hole that seemed impossible. And then, what was it? My brother got clean around that time too. So he gave himself to God and he moved to Vegas. I think that was around 2011. And he would always tell me like, hey bro, I know what you're going through. It's rough, it's hard, but it's not impossible. There's a room here for you.
Yeah. Wow.
Whenever you're ready, man, come out here.
Yeah.
And I just kept that in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, man, if he can do it,
Yeah.
bro, I know I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to psych myself out. And it's hard. I told myself, okay, because you don't want to leave your comfort zone, especially where you can get your addiction, your stuff.
Yeah.
What is it? For me, it was meth. You know, beer is always around the corner, cigarettes, all that stuff. It wasn't really, it was the meth that really I was like trying to escape. But I had to psych myself out. I remember that day too. I told my sister, I was like, man, Jen, her name is Jennifer. I was like, I gotta go to Vegas for a week or for a weekend or a week or so.
Yeah.
She was like, what? No way. And then like, I forgot how the conversation went, but she knew too. She knew. She's like, oh man, you better not leave me.
Yeah.
You better not leave me, because it was always me and my sister, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thick and thin. And then we were both in it. And so it's like, man, I love you, sis, but in my head, you know, I gotta go. I was like, nah, I'll just go for a weekend. So I packed a bag. And then once I set foot in Vegas, I told myself, that's it. I got rid of my old contacts, my old connects. I just cut the line to everybody, yeah. And then that was when my new journey began.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough. Don't get me wrong. It was rough. Like the kicking is real. You know, you just gotta, it was hard. I don't know how I did it, but I know how it was Jesus. But it was a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying not to go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 2013, man, that was when I gave myself to God. And
oh, wow. That's good.
been clean ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, from that step, you know, the Lord opened up doors for people to come help me and just be around brothers that are, you know, in a different part of their life. I don't know how you say that. What is it?
Yeah.
In a different walk.
Yeah.
To kind of help me.
Yeah.
To get past that next step.
Yeah.
You know?
That's good.
So
That's good.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No. No, yeah, that's good. Yeah, so when you went to Vegas, it was that week, right, where you disconnected?
Yeah.
And then would you say that was when you started this journey of like kind of renewal and then like got on this like giving your life to Christ? Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
first week was hard because it's just, man, you want to go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really want to go back to it because it's easy. You know, it's easy to go back and just smoke everything away and
Yeah.
be comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good.
But yeah, God surrounded me with a bunch of brothers that went through the same process. And
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's dude, wow, thank you so much for sharing. Wow. That's I actually don't even think I really knew your full story of like your testimony. So that's like wow, what God delivered you from. And now it's like for everybody out there, like now he's like the sound man at our church and he's serving the Lord over here in Hawaii. And that's just amazing to see that God is not done with everybody's story, like no matter where they're at in their life, like even if you're at rock bottom, that it just took like people to surround you.
Yeah.
Right. And then just be like, hey, like the door is always open. I think that's amazing. And then having that step of like, I want to turn my life around. Yeah. So I think it's just I think that's awesome to have that moment of, hey, I think enough is enough. And like I've hit rock bottom. And I think at rock bottom is actually that's the time where we're able to, there's nowhere else to look but up.
Yeah.
And so it's
exactly.
like, okay, now it's like in my court, am I going to just stay here at rock bottom or am I going to like go to Jesus and be like, yeah, I need to find whatever this void is. It looks like it needs something. And it's like, oh, it was Jesus. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Mike, have you ever had any addiction struggles or?
Yeah, I'd say so. Right when you came up with the word addictions, the thing that came to mind was actually, like for me, it was the addiction to pornography and lustful thoughts. And I was thinking like, it was, like it's been a journey. So, there's a program that our church went through. It was called Pure Desire, and it focused like specifically like there's like programs out there like Celebrate Recovery, just addictions of all kind. Pure Desire in itself was like specifically again for sexual purity and like sexual addiction, like just like those things. And that was like it's funny, like as you were sharing your story, Rude, I was in the same spot of just like, man, it's almost like it becomes like deep seated rooted, where it's like I'm doing stuff not meaning to do it, but I'm just, my body just does things. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's just like a weird feel where it's almost like, think of like a habit, but like to another level. And so for me, it was the program. It put us together with fellow like-minded like brothers who were just like, dude, we got to kick this. And it was like, we had to go deep-seated because what we found out was that addiction itself, whatever we're doing, is a symptom of what we're not dealing with.
Yeah.
And we're just wanting to cover it up, not dealing with whatever we did in the past or whatever it was. And it's like, however long we've been doing it as well, you know what I mean? It's like you can go back and seeing like when was the first time that ever happened. And so this program had us go all the way back, like from the very first memory, in order to identify what is it that we're trying to hide? What is it that I'm trying to like, if a topic comes up, then I just go right into it. And so I think the thing that hits the most when it comes to just addiction in general for me is that there's a huge shame factor. Like there's like so much shame that I did not want anybody to know. So like, just in case you don't know, right? So like she just introduced me as a youth pastor. And I think that in and of itself is just like a shameful act in its space. So like it took all the way up until that point where I had other brothers in the church who were walking alongside me, where it was like not just me, not just like I'm not the only one like struggling through this. I had to like dig into this like deep. And so like when I think back to it, like my first memory of like pornography was like maybe like 5 years old. And it was just like, just typical hanging out with cousins things. It just kind of comes up, and then like me not really even knowing what's happening and not even like deciding on anything. It just builds up from there. And I just remember just like so many spaces. So when I think of like addictions, I think that's what it is. It's like I was able to, it was super difficult, I gotta say. Because in the midst of it, it's like there's me, I've grown up in the church. I've grown up knowing Jesus. It's like I've been to Bible study. I've been like children's ministry, youth group, young adults. Like, I've been a part of everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even though I was in the midst of Jesus stuff, like that whole time, like pornography was like in the midst of all like the like behind like closed doors. And it's like the thing, like my coming to Jesus moment for that in particular was that I was finding that I was like living two lives. It was like such a weird like space because then I'd be going to church and then everything would be good. I'd have a smile, I'd have all these things, and it would just be like a weird feel because like for all intents and purposes, being in church the whole time, leading ministries, seeing people like changed because of the Lord using me in those spaces.
Yeah.
And then having this like at nighttime. Like for me, it wasn't, nothing ever went past that, but it's like it's a gateway thing. It opens it. It just gets worse and worse and worse as time goes through. So like I'm, what is that? I'm a little, so I was in it for a minute. And the coming to Jesus moments was actually me finding out that my addiction wasn't just hurting me, my spirit. It was hurting everyone around me. And when I say everyone, it's not like I'm like going out there like, hey guys, look at this. You know, it was more like my sister, my wife, my mom, my dad, like just like very close people who like they know. And like for anyone who's been caught in addiction, I mean, you've been caught. And that was me. Those were my moments where like I was caught. And the thing that hit me was that when I was confronted every time where it's like, hey, so I kind of saw this, and then I would like lie. I had been in it so long that my lying would just like, it would just flow out of my mouth. It was like something that I was like, whoa. I think it was like one of those times. I think as you were talking, I was just going back to those moments because I had lied to myself so often that it's like, oh, it's just me. It's just me that's doing this. You know what I mean? Like I'm still smiling for everybody. I'm still helping everybody out. I'm still like, I'm still a good guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm still doing good things. God is working. And so I'd like make so many excuses. And then the thing that occurred to me was that like I hurt the people closest to me. That's when like where it just, that was the coming to Jesus moment where it's like, oh snap, like I can make all the excuses I want, but I need to get like, there's something more than me that needs to happen to like get out of it, bro. It's like so nuts where when I think about it, it was always like a form of like shame where it's like, oh man, I can't talk about this and I have to cover it up. Only when like going through this and finding that I had like brothers who are like, when a thought would come through, we'd text. And it's crazy because like we wouldn't go into any detail because everyone has triggers. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're not trying to like trigger people, but we'd say, pray for me, please. That's all we would need to hear. I would send text messages and it would be crazy for me because it's like, I just know that when I send that these guys about to pray for me. Yeah. And then I knew also like when they would send text messages, I would drop and I would pray for them. And there's just something about like knowing that I'm not in this like battle alone, that's actually like when I think of addictions, it's like it's something that's like super ingrained in your life. That's my when I hear the word addiction, I'm like something that just like, because like I said, I went to church. I was a part of leadership. I was a part of all of this. And yet it was something where it's like, man, I feel like I had this analogy as I was going through the program. It's like I'm standing in the middle of a field and I have all these defenses around me to help me. And I just didn't push the button and I didn't turn them on. So like I had the fellowship, I had the things in like from the course, I had those things, and it's like we would be going through these things, and then it occurred to me where it's like, man, I know that I need to like delete this app. I know that I need to like go to sleep at a certain time. I know that I need to do all these things, and yet I just wasn't doing it, and I was like a crazy thing, bro. I don't know, man. This addiction thing is like for real. Where like everybody got their own thing, but for me, it was like getting caught was probably like the best thing ever. Best worst thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like bittersweet, because then it occurred to me that the people who caught me, like they gave a chance to be like, I know this isn't you. And it's that grace, it's that love, it's that like, that's what helped me to get through these things. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
It's just like, it's wild, bro, how deep it goes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
bro. But yeah, anyways, that was mine.
Yeah.
And it's always like, I don't know if you have this thing, bro, but like, so you say like 12 years sober, right?
12 years.
Right? So dope.
That's real.
And
That's
so,
Jesus,
but what
That's
I do
awesome.
know is that it always like the temptation always kicks.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like,
It does.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, being sober, dope. But dude, I'm like, those safeguards that I put back then,
Yeah.
they're not gone. I gotta like re-up on those. I gotta make sure, I gotta check the fences and check the defenses and make sure that like I have those things that are in parameters. Otherwise, it's like I'm gonna go down that same path. Like one of those recovery steps is understanding like what was it that got you to that point,
Yeah.
and then like make sure that's not an avenue anymore. I think there's one of the things in the course, it was called burn the bridges. No, burn the boats.
Burn the boat.
Burn the boats. That was like that. There's just like this old military tactic. It was like they all came on boats to go and conquer. As they all got off, then they all got onto the beach or whatever. They all got off the boats. The captain, the general, burned everything and was like, we're either gonna go and like win or we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like there's no way we're going back. That was that's the analogy that
That's the
always
mission.
comes back. You know, that's the
Yeah.
field, bro. It's like if you truly in that spot that you want to like kick it, then whatever avenue that used to get you there, that's what needs to get like out of your life.
Yep.
And if you have excuses, that's exactly what they are. It's either cut it, whatever those avenues are, cut those avenues. Because if you don't cut it, then you ain't serious. That's a thought. That's a thought, bro. I don't know what you think.
Yeah.
Nah, it's true. It's true because even when you're explaining that part, I was thinking back to where in the beginning when I first started, like you're talking about having the barriers and the protection, the avenues to stop to go to people like, hey, I didn't have all that, you know. So it was kind of different before the things of God. It was my friends were all doing it, so even though when I try to leave, it would still get brought up. Like, oh, hey, man, let's go smoke.
Yeah.
So then it was just like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's real. It's real, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, trying to get out.
Yeah. I love both of your guys' stories, and I think it just gives different perspectives of, you know, growing up in the church and having those barriers and those people that were able to talk about that with you. And then also having that struggle of having people around you that everybody was doing it. So it's like, it's that like how you did it with, but at the same time, I like that how you talked about that even though you were walking with Jesus, you were still having that battle of addiction, and you still had that secret sin of like, hey, I'm out here and I'm professing Jesus, but then at home I'm dealing with something else. And I like how you guys brought up that fact of shame. And so I kind of wanted to ask the question of just like, how do you overcome shame, or how did you get over that barrier of like, okay, you know what, hey guys, I went through this, and you know, being able to talk about it now, because I think back then it probably would have been hard to talk about this with other people, but like what has gotten you guys to this point where now you're able to talk about it to everybody? Hey guys.
That is true. I think for me it was that I was able to process it out loud, like with somebody, like being able to like actually speak through, and then of course it's someone else who's been through it. I think like that's the most amazing thing that the Lord's blessed anyone with addiction is that there's nothing new under the sun, and there's someone who has already gone through that that's able to just lift people up. And I think that's like the most amazing thing. And so I'd say like that shame thing is once someone else knows, it becomes a little easier to bear. I don't know if that's a it's like when it's not just me where I'm like thinking like, oh, I'm such a horrible person. Like I was just beating myself up every time. So like my self-esteem was like so low because I'm like, here I am serving an amazing God and I'm doing this so not amazing thing. But once I was able to like really talk through that and bring that out, then it's like, I think God still loves me. And I had to sit in that.
Yeah.
And just time.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. No, yeah. Shame. I think and I think another thing too though that I was thinking about it, when it comes to addiction is that honestly, I feel like everybody deals with some type of addiction, whether it be meth or whether it be porn, or even I think there's people out there like, oh, well, I don't relate to that, Well, honestly, I think social media is an addiction. I think food's an addiction. I think lust is an addiction. Just looking at somebody, and just having those lustful thoughts, like all of those things are addictions. And when we recognize that, hey, yo, we all kind of battle with that.
Yeah.
And so now it's just really like what you're saying, getting to the root of that it's masking what's really going on the inside, that my addiction is me trying to run away from something. I'm running away from a problem. And so like when I think about it, like, oh yeah, I'm addicted to social media. I'm addicted to Netflix. And so the thought and the question that comes into my mind is like, okay, my addiction, what am I running from? Like, what is there something that's like taking the place of God that God is like wanting to confront, but I refuse to go there, And so it's really that space of saying, okay, like, let me recognize and get to the root of the problem. And so I guess my question to you guys is like, do you guys feel like you had a root? Like, what was the thing that you guys feel like, ooh, if I were to think back and when I first started, like, was there something that you were probably going from, or was it just like you were trying to battle with something, or it just picked up?
When I first started, I'm gonna say it was almost like a generational curse or traditional. It was like something that we grew up around. Of our aunties, uncles, neighbors, being around that kind of like drug, and then as kids growing up, thinking in the back of our mind that was okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we got older, well, for me, it was like, all right, so I thought it was okay too, but it wasn't.
No. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, no.
That's a good one.
Read that question.
So like, do you think like, as you were saying, how you were processing that you guys had to get to the root of the problem?
Yeah.
What was your root?
So I had like one of those things where I went to like this private school. So I got a bunch of cousins, and I was kind of looked up as like the golden child. Always had like good grades. Always had like the other like people always went like I was just always lifted up to a pedestal. I was always put on a pedestal. So then like that was when I was like in elementary school. So good in middle school. Then when it came to high school, that was when I was like I guess like the expectations that I had for myself and the expectations that I felt that other people had for me, I was just not meeting them. Whether I wasn't like getting an A for a class, or I wasn't like doing like everyone's like, oh yeah, Mike, he knows how to do all these things. He can do this and he can do that. And when I know how much I could do and then didn't do, it's like I would take a back seat to things and I would just fall into the addiction. Because then I was like, instead of having to, do the work, study or whatnot, I would have to say that I was lying to myself. I was like, I deserve to watch this because I deserve, like, there's so much like tension that this is what I need in order to go to sleep. This is what I need to like feel pressure alleviated. This is what I feel like I just felt like that was like my root, where it's like there's all of these expectations that I just wasn't meeting. Like, just to give a little background, like from when I was a little kid, I think the idea of being a doctor was like the thing. And when I got to college, I found out I really am not good at like math and science. And you kind of need that to be a doctor.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. You kind of need that. But like there were like classes that I had to like retake, like 2 or 3, and these were like intro classes. And I was like, that was also another spot of like shame. But it was like, once again, there's like this expectation that I'm gonna be a doctor. You know what I mean? And then knowing that I'm striving to be a doctor and it's not coming through, that was even more of like a shame factor of like not meeting expectations. And like the thing about those things is everyone showed love. And I don't know if I was like trying to like be like, I don't think I came to that spot where I was like, if I don't be a doctor, people ain't gonna love me. You know what I mean? But I did come to that spot where it's like, man, I am not good. And these pressures of everything is coming up. And little by little, it was just me lying to myself. It was me giving excuses of like, I deserve this. That was like actually the whole thing. And so the root of it was that it's like I was placing everyone's expectations on myself rather than the expectation that God had on me, which was just to follow his lead. I was following everybody else's lead. And that led me to so many different routes that eventually when I was like, when all of those routes hit a dead end, did I find that I was like, all right, Lord, where should I go? He like pointed me, and it was like a yellow brick road to where I needed to go.
Yeah.
And that's where the pastor thing came through. Because it was like, I was really trying to do all these. I never thought that being a pastor was a thing because I never had those expectations. I was always like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be, okay. If not, I'm going to get a bachelor's in English and get a master's here so I can go to med school. And everything was just always trying to be a doctor. And then eventually it was just like, when I was like, all right, Lord, where do you want me to go? And then from that direction came like this sense of freedom, bro. Yeah. It was just like, I didn't have to like, it really didn't matter to me what people thought no more. There really wasn't like this expectation heavy on me anymore because like literally like how the word says like his yoke is easy. Like coming onto Jesus like that, bro, it's like, oh, it was an amazing feeling. But that's how I knew what the root of it was. Because once Jesus took all that from me, I don't know why, but it's like that's when everything was just falling into place like how it should have been.
Yeah.
And it was like super nuts because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I never saw this coming. And yet everybody else was like, bro, writing was on the wall a long time ago. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe I just wasn't looking. You know?
Yeah. That's funny. What's it called? No, I actually, so I like what both of you are saying, but I like Rudy when you're talking about the generational, how it was like you felt like it was a generational thing. But I feel like that was such a cool testimony that despite you feeling it was a generational thing, it stopped at you. And I think that that's like a definitely a cool testimony to everybody that like, even if we feel like there's generational curses of addiction within our family cycles, it's like, okay, well, that happened to so-and-so, that happened to my dad, that happened to my grandpa, but that's not going to happen with me. And, you know, and I feel like it starts there where it's like, okay, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to take that personal step to actually have a change in the course of my life and in the course of, you know, my kids as well. And so, yeah, no, that's awesome. And then Mike too, with the whole that you just did, you know, the expectation was what God says about you and not what other people say about you, but having that lead your life. And so really, it's just really having Jesus at the center of everything that we're able to change the course of our lives and follow after him and everything. That's awesome, guys. But I kind of wanted to talk about, so I feel like there's definitely people here that are watching this and that may be dealing with addiction or that may be in this spot currently. And so I kind of just wanted to say, like, do you guys have any advice for people that may be struggling with addiction or that may be on this path of not really knowing what to do right now in their life, what would you say, like, what would you say to help them in this spot, I guess, so to say? John Cannibal.
You go, man.
Okay, yeah, go. There's a renewing of your mind that it says in Romans 12. Like when you're in Jesus, you literally become a different person. But like the better version. Like there's like self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. And I feel like that is the things that you lean on. And how you do that is prayer, reading the word, and being in the community that God's blessed you with. And if you feel as though you're not in a community, you're probably not. And you need to go find yourself one. Because there's, I think Rudy can mention this, like a way out of addiction is not by yourself. Yes, Jesus. But what I know is that Jesus puts people in your life. And it's not that you don't have anyone. It's that you're not looking with his eyes. Like he has definitely placed people in your life. Maybe you just haven't been looking. Like me. I did not know Pastor was in the spot. But it's because I just definitely wasn't looking that way. And everything was on my shoulders. But if you just like pray, like speak to the one who can change you. And you read the word, then you're able to really have his word speak into your life. And that community kicks your butt, bro. The accountability is for real. And you need that. It's almost like a personal trainer. You know what I mean? But he's just like, the Lord has provided you with people. Like, you really can't do this Jesus life alone. You cannot. Maybe there's like times where you feel like, oh man, like the world hates me or whatnot, the world's against me. It's like when you got the creator of the universe on your side.
Yeah.
What is this addiction? I'm not devaluing what the struggle is that you're going through. But we have a God who's way bigger than this. And you just need to look at your schedule, look at your day, and just like see where you can just have more Jesus in your life. That's the change that I feel like if you find that you're having a difficult spot there, maybe just reevaluate how your Jesus walk is, because that's where the change comes. But
That's good. Community. That's what Rudy was saying to you earlier. Yeah.
I would say if it's hard for you guys right now, like if you're in meth, can't put down a bottle, even pills nowadays, that's a big one. And it seems like there's no way out. It's like you gotta lie to yourself. You gotta find a way to psych yourself out, and you need to uproot yourself out of your environment, because it's your environment that's helping feed that evil dragon, that addiction that's taking you down. I would say psych yourself out, uproot, go somewhere where you don't know nobody, find a church, recovery home, some kind of program that's built to help you pass that first step, and let Jesus in, man. Yeah, 'cause when I was going through it, my scripture was Exodus 14:14. Be still and let the Lord fight for you.
That's good.
Because I was struggling. I fought myself against a wall, and I had no way out. And it was real. Like I couldn't get away from meth. I couldn't, But I just kept hearing my brother's voice, and I knew that was God. He's, hey man, I have a room. In other words, like, hey son, I have a way out. Let's go. Well, don't worry about nothing. Just come through, and I'll take care of you. And if you look in that passage, that's exactly what happened. Jesus provided a way out. Crossed the water, crossed the desert with me. Yeah.
That's good.
And there's always help, man. And lean on Jesus. He'll guide you through.
Yeah, bro, because as you were talking about that, like it literally says in the word, bro, that we have a way out.
Yeah.
Like every temptation that comes our way, it's not finite. Like it's not like it's gonna be there forever.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Like literally, the word is just like, hey, you're gonna be tempted. It's gonna come at you.
Yeah, it's gonna
But
get rough.
There's a way out.
That's good.
Like there's always a choice to get out. Because when I look back at those times, I'm like, I can look back and be like, oh, there was a sign. There was a sign. Oh, somebody came and tried to invite me out, but I was like, nah.
Blinking
Someone
red,
tried to get me out of
lights.
there.
Yep.
It's like all those different things where it's like, even like there's always like if you feel like, man, no, it's a part of my life. That's who I am now. That's that's a lie of the enemy, bro. That's a lie of the devil. Like your addiction is not who you are.
Nope.
Ooh, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that does not define you. The word defines you. Jesus calls you to be something totally out of this world. That once you're in him, you're just different. So that's addiction as much as, because I feel like we can both speak on that, bro. Like it definitely was a lie that was just like, well, this is just how I go to sleep. Yeah. This is just what happens when I'm alone. This is like, I just had those thoughts where I was justifying it very differently over and over again, justifying it all the time. And I was just like, bro, stop lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Like nothing good is coming from that. Like you have less energy. You're staying away from people.
Yep.
Maybe it's like you're temperamental.
Isolating yourself.
I know those like just addictions in general. Like once you're in it too long, you just kind of disconnect from
everything.
Everything, you just kind of lose focus. And then when you try to come back into it, you just kind of like takes you a little bit to get back in the flow, you know, and then you kind of lose that flow. Yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of comes through. It's like, but you got a way out.
You do.
There is.
You know what's hilarious is that as you guys are talking about this, you know, like I would say, wow, okay, yeah, these addictions, you know, if like I was talking about before, you could think that, wow, those are addictions, or wow, yeah, I don't struggle with that. But as I was saying before, even social media or even food or even lust, these all can be addictions as well. And as you guys are talking about it, I'm like, ooh, when I was addicted, or when I am addicted to social media, I definitely go through those. I disconnect and I don't want to talk to anybody, and I'm just on my phone 24/7, and I kind of just shut the world out, but I don't realize that I'm doing that until I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like, oh, I haven't seen so-and-so in so long. And then people, you know, start hitting you up like, hey, yo, it's been a minute. Like, what's going on? I'm just like, oh, I'm good. And then, you know, you think about it like, I don't want to go out. And then I start putting up these little barriers one at a time. It goes up and it's like, oh, snap, wait a second, what's going on? And then I realize that, oh, okay, that's when it's like, okay, I've gotten to this habit of like, I need to fast. I need to cut this thing off because this thing is taking over my life. And so, but when I cut that off, then I realize that, oh, wow, there's life. Like, oh wow, I was letting social media to take a hold of my life, or I was letting everything else but God. It literally is when you put anything else before God, that could be an addiction. And so it's stripping that away and saying, no, Lord, I'm going to put you first in my life. And as you guys were talking about, but it's a daily thing. It's not something that it's like, oh, once I'm free, woo, I'm free, and you know, we're set free and all hunky-dory for the rest of our lives. No, there's always going to be something that's going to come up and try, because the devil does not like it when we get closer to Jesus. And so I think that's so good. But I love that both of you guys were here to talk about your story. Thank you so much. I think what I love about this too is I was listening to a pastor, and this phrase has definitely stuck out to me this whole week. It's you know, I feel like in the church we're all about come and see, when really our mission should be go and tell. Go and tell. And I've walked with both of you before, and I know that both of you guys are advocates to talking to other people who are dealing with addictions or who are walking that journey, to be able to come alongside them. And I think that I love that we're able to do this, to be able to show people that like, hey, you know, you're not alone, because there's everybody else's, there's people that deal with this too. And we're able to come alongside you and say, hey, it's okay to get help. And I love what you're talking about, that, you know, there's so many resources. And I think it really just takes that step of eliminating the shame and saying, you know, I'm going to get help, and I'm going to take that first step, that it's okay to say I need help. And I think that was something that came up in my mind, that was just like, I think nowadays we put up this facade of I'm strong and I got it all put together.
We got this.
We got this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like everyone asks you, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's like when we really sit down with people and really ask them, like, no, like for real, how are you? You know? And it's like we won't be able to hear these kind of conversations unless we do that, unless we take the time to be like, no, yo, how are you? Because I feel like we've gotten so used to, I'm guilty of this too. Just like, I'm fine, I'm good. Because I think that you really don't want to hear about what I'm going through. Or it's like, I'm shame, I don't want to talk about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so it's taking that step of saying, okay, let's be raw. I need help and I need to talk to somebody about this. So yeah, thanks guys for this. This was awesome. I feel like they ran the whole pod. Like, was I even here? But it was good. It was a great conversation. But yeah, I think what are your, I guess I kind of want your last final thoughts. What are your guys' thoughts about, do you agree with that, of telling other people your story and not being ashamed of what you've been through? Like, use your story to tell other people about it.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Definitely helps, you know, let people know, like, oh, they're not alone, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if you ever do a part 2, let me know.
He said,
I'm down,
got you.
dude, because, like, it's just certain parts, you know, like, it's just hard to dig
Yeah.
into because,
Yeah.
again, like I said in the beginning, it's not funny. It's like,
Yeah.
it's rough. It's real.
Yeah.
The struggle's real, you know? But,
Yeah.
just, you're not alone, man. Don't be ashamed. Just go tell, hey, I'm a drug addict. What's up?
Yeah.
You have any issues? You know, you want to talk? Need somebody to talk to? Here's my number.
No, that's real.
You know, it
Yeah.
is. So,
You know, as we were like just talking story, like one of those things is that I was getting like just pretty emotional just thinking back to those places, because like those come to Jesus moments where like I found out that like I hurt the ones that I love the most.
yeah.
I was like, man, like that, it's still like fresh,
Yep.
like in my heart and my soul, of like what it did, and like it's lasting, but there's a God that gives grace in that spot. You know, like there's that space, and I'm just like, whoa, man. Yeah. Like being able to tell your story is like, that's how you connect with people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the thing is that people aren't going to be vulnerable and be able to like ask you for prayer for anything if they don't know that you actually like are real.
Yeah.
Like being able to tell your actual story, and especially at this level, right? At like this kind of level of being vulnerable in this spot, like if you're able to share like to that level, then there's only like more to like deeper conversations that'll come from it, you know?
Yeah.
And like I share this story with a smile only because I know that there's freedom that we have in Jesus from it.
That's good.
And so it's like when I share it, there's not like I can share from the perspective, and maybe they'll understand, right? It's like it almost like makes people who follow Jesus like, oh hey, we're human.
Yeah.
Like we just like you know what I mean? It's not like because we have Jesus, it's like, oh now we're like hi maka maka, you know what I mean? It's like we're up here now that we got
Sorry,
Jesus.
guys.
I don't know what
sorry.
you're dealing
We're,
with.
Yeah.
You know, we are all up here. Like no, it's I feel like when you're able to tell your story, you're able to come to an understanding that it's like, I am going through things, and I feel like you're going through things too. And then there's a common ground, and then it's like, but I'm able to smile and have this joy because of Jesus. Like, do you have that, Jesus?
Yeah.
And that's like the kind of hope thing that comes through with being able to go and tell. That's amazing, because otherwise you just, why would you have, I feel like, why would you have all this Jesus goodness happening on the inside of you, and then you don't share it? It's like, dude, we got the Great Commission on our side, bro. Jesus went up and was like, go and make disciples. Like, literally him telling us to go. You know? So, so go and tell it.
No, that's good. That's good. And I was just thinking about it. So there's that verse in Corinthians 12. I think it's second or first, but it talks about how my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made strong in your weakness. And really in the context of that verse, it was when Paul had a thorn in his side, and he asked God to please remove the thorn from my side. And he asked him 3 times, but the Lord didn't remove it. And he said, And the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made strong in your weakness. And so that is a picture of just like, so then Paul goes, okay, well then I'm going to boast all the more about my weakness so that you will shine through me. And so really it's like, I'm going to boast about these weaknesses that I feel like, so that people can come to know Christ. And like, that's why I feel like when we go through that suffering, or when we go through those seasons where it was tough and we come out of it, well, okay, well now I'm commissioned to go tell other people my story so that they can come to Christ. And so really it's like that's the hope and prayer, is that through these episodes, through these testimonies, that we're able to see that, man, if God can work in Rudy, if God can work in Mike, then he can work in my life as well. And so like, I love that you guys are here. I love that we're able to just shed light and just start the conversation of what addictions are and how can Jesus redeem those addictions. So man, thank you guys so much. You guys killed it. You guys are great. Yes. Love it. We love it. And I hope you guys got a little bit of hope throughout your life and throughout your season that you may be dealing with right now. But we want you guys to remember that hope is always found in him, with him, and because of him. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you all next week. Thank you. Goodbye.